Georgia Tech is a team now looking for a head coach, and they're looking for a new AD as well as of this morning. So Georgia Tech kind of finds themselves in a crossroad, but Jeff Collins out as of today, 10-28 in 4 seasons. Their 1-3 record this season. He followed up the great Paul Johnson in that triple option offense after 11 seasons there. Collins was supposed to be the guy to kind of bring Georgia Tech and the Yellow Jackets into the new era of college football. A lot of juice. That did not pan out well. So $11.3 million buyout for Jeff Collins. He's going to be living well. A lot of Waffle House for him. But Drew, as we look at Georgia Tech, a lot has been made about Jackson State head coach Deion Sanders, and we've talked about him here on this show and why we thought he would be a Power 5 fit and why we think he is ready. To me, the time has come, but I want to get your thoughts on this, and maybe I'll be the first one because I don't want to put you in a tough spot here. But the first call for me, Georgia Tech. You look at Georgia Tech, Atlanta, where they are in the ACC. That recruiting footprint in Atlanta, what is there, 25 prospects from the state of Georgia in the top 247. We've seen the impact that Deion Sanders has had at Jackson State, HBCU, arguably the biggest recruiting win in college football history, flipping the number 1 player from Florida State and Mike Norvell last year and Travis Hunter. The marketability of primetime Deion Sanders in a top 10 market in the United States in Atlanta, Georgia, I think is a perfect fit. But if I'm also Deion Sanders, Georgia Tech has to be ready. I think Georgia Tech needs Deion Sanders a lot more than Deion Sanders needs Georgia Tech. To me, this comes down to who's making the decision, and then behind that, who is going to commit the resources and invest in everything you need, from facilities to support staff to coaching staff, salary pool. All that has to be considered. And if Deion Sanders is not going to get that from Georgia Tech or somewhere else, I would stay right where he is at Jackson State. And I think he's got a pretty good thing going there. So that's going to be interesting. But I think this is a grand slam for Georgia Tech. I would do anything to get this one done.
Yeah, I could go in a bunch of different directions here. Why do I think Deion Sanders would work at Georgia Tech? I think it's because he's real. And you mentioned Jeff Collins and what went wrong with him. And you said the Waffle House stuff and the 404. Just talking with some college contacts, they all thought, everyone had this perception that Collins was doing so well on the recruiting trail. But in reality, they weren't. Sure, they got Jahmyr Gibbs, and obviously he left for Alabama, but really it seemed like all fake smoke. And I think if Prime were to come in there in Atlanta, a place where he played for the Atlanta Falcons, he played for the Atlanta Braves, the community's going to accept him. He's going to be able to recruit extremely well at a very high level, and there's going to be a ton of energy and buzz. But Cooper, you mentioned it. Georgia Tech needs to make the decision. Do we want to be real about football? Do we want to invest the money and give him the resources to get this thing right? Because what we've seen at Jackson State, as he has come in and demanded some changes at that HBCU, and he has gotten his way, whether that be new practice fields, positions for analysts, a new strength coach. He's gotten all that. Is he going to get the same stuff at Georgia Tech? So for me, my first call, I'd try to gauge things out with, how about Dan Mullen, the former Florida coach? I mean, this is a guy that has 13 seasons of FBS head coaching experience, Power 5 head coaching experience. When he was at Mississippi State, all but one season did he not make a bowl game. And if you're Georgia Tech, that has to sound, you got to be excited about that. I think when I look at Dan Mullen and what he is as a coach, he gets the most out of the least amount. And sure, that might be because of his recruiting deficiencies, but I think he could go in there and win with, the 3 stars, the low 4 stars in the Peach State. And the thing with Dan Mullen is I think he's going to get some good assistant coaches to work with him. He's a guy that's been around. And to me, getting good assistant coaches would go a long way. He wouldn't be fake with what he is there. I think it's a little bit opposite of G.F. Collins and what he was trying to sell with the 404 and the Waffle House and all that stuff. I think his personality, Dan's fiery one, would maybe fit in at Georgia Tech, that wants to be a little bit budget friendly. And the biggest thing with Dan Mullen to me is you could hire him next week and he can go out and start recruiting or evaluating his roster and seeing what he needs to do to be competitive in 2023 and beyond.
I like that in terms of Dan Mullen. The biggest thing for me with that year off, obviously he's an analyst at ESPN now, but can you recalibrate, right? Is this going to be new energy with Dan Mullen? We kind of saw this with Mac Brown. He obviously was out of the game for a handful of years before taking the job and accepting the head coaching responsibility at North Carolina. But if you're Dan Mullen can coach. That he has a proven track record. We've seen that from him his entire career. He knows how to win football games, and I think he fits at a place like Georgia Tech. Georgia Tech just has to make the decision whether or not we're going to commit to being a good football program. And if you're doing that, then I think it makes so much sense to invest into somebody like Deion Sanders. And I think Dan Mullen, if you're going to stay more in the same lane that you have been, I think Dan Mullen makes a lot of sense as well. But Drew, I'm going to name a couple other names here that are in consideration, a lot that we've heard from the national media as well. But Charles Huff from Marshall, that both of you and I have championed throughout this offseason. Jamie Chadwell, who continues to do a tremendous job at Coastal Carolina. Jeff Monken at Army, more of what Georgia Tech has had in the past with that triple option offense. Del McGee, who knows the state of Georgia extremely well, the running backs coach at Georgia. And then you have a list of other familiar names. Bill O'Brien, Dan Mullen, we touched on. Alex Atkins, Drew, I'm going to let you hit on that one in a second. And Bronco Mendenhall as well. But that one, Alex Atkins, he's an Oyster Boys favorite, Drew. Why do you think that one is somebody that a name that we should keep an eye on for Georgia Tech?
Oh, look at what Florida State's doing, right? They're 4-0. Alex Atkins has the offensive coordinator title there, working for Mike Norvell. And I think when you look at Alex Atkins, he's an excellent recruiter, and he has rebuilt that offensive line for the Seminoles. So maybe this isn't the position for him. Maybe this isn't the jumping spot going to Georgia Tech, but I think he would do excellent right there in Atlanta. He's got experience throughout the Southeast. Again, I think he's a really good recruiter. My biggest question would be what kind of staff can he assemble and what kind of budget would he be given? But I think Alex Atkins is the guy that's not been talked about enough in the realm of potential coaching candidates. Maybe he needs to go G5 before he goes Power 5, but that's someone I think we as a whole aren't talking about enough, Alex Atkins.
I'm going to throw one more name out there. We didn't have him on the graphic package, so I apologize, producer Jesse. But that's Brian Hartland. I kind of brought it up last week. I don't know what's next for Brian Hartline. He is the best receivers coach in the country from a talent acquisition standpoint, and he's also very highly respected at Ohio State, Zone 6, what he's built there. But you talk about what's next for him. Is it a coordinator spot? It's going to take an awful lot to pluck him out of Columbus, and I don't know what that looks like. And if you're Brian Hartline, you might just be saying, hey, I'm good. I got the best job in the world. I'm working with Ryan Day. He lets me go out and recruit the best players in the country to Ohio State, and I understand that. But he has to be a pretty enticing guy with where he is in his career, being under Ryan Day, with the job that they do in Columbus. I think that's another name to watch out for. Maybe not with Georgia Tech, but in the future, I wouldn't be surprised if his name is getting some buzz. But